When I first got my PlayStation 4 over a year ago, I got one of those Uncharted bundles. In fact, it was this exact Uncharted bundle. And while I did hear a lot of good things about these games, I never really played them, to be honest. Now, hang on, there's a little train of thought here. When I found out a couple of days later that there was a promotion for it, I had to go for it because it was one of those where you could get another game on top of that bundle for free. Thanks to some very helpful employees, I was able to acquire the game with a minimum of fuss and without spending any cash. Even so, I didn't touch that game for over 6 months because, in all honesty, the reasons why I wanted a PlayStation 4 included Street Fighter V and the third or fourth time I bought Spelunky. Anyway, as it turns out, after a bunch of goading from a friend of mine, I finally sat down to play this. And it turned out to be one of the most wonderfully new and familiar experiences at the same time. With a new expansion out and a whole bunch of updates, I figured it's finally time to review and face the game I had ignored initially for so long. It's time to face Destiny. Destiny was released on September 9th, 2014 for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, as well as on the now legacy PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 consoles. The beginning of the story has you waking up from the dead as this floaty shape thing called a ghost finds your corpse and resurrects you from being absorbed into the ground somewhere in Russia. You don't have a lot of time to figure out your bearings, though, as aliens are all over the place and you have to find a jump ship to escape. The exposition before your resurrection talks about some entity called the Traveler, a golden age of expansion, and the darkness currently encompassing the system. Your job as a new Guardian is to do different missions for the current military body and figure out what in the world happened to Earth and the surrounding planets. Like many games that everyone tells me I should play, I figured this was going to be another game that I was going to ignore. Turns out I was wrong. It's so interesting that even my dad enjoys me playing the game while he watches. As you attempt to figure out what in the world is going on, the game assaults you with a wide variety of areas, ranging from the area you were found on Earth, old Russia, all the way through the close-by inner planets of Venus and Mars, along with the Moon, and an area called the Expanse. The first major expansion, The Taken King, adds the Dreadnought, which is a large ship stationed in the rings of Saturn, and the second expansion, Rise of Iron, expands old Russia, following up with an old clan known as the Iron Wolves. The environments look incredible, and each one presents new challenges whether you progress the story or just patrol around looking for things to kill. Story progression is still very good, with the game itself being the story of your Guardian and how it relates to current events, and an online database called the Grimoire that handles all the backstory and lore. A lot of people don't like this aspect of the game, and in some ways, I agree. There are better ways to integrate the lore into the actual story of the game without having to resort to collecting cards to read on a website or an app. However, the actual story and lore of the game is still very fascinating, and I like progressing just to find out more about this weird universe that I'm blowing up aliens, robots, and weird demon spawn in. Okay, so you're running around in large expansive areas, either by yourself or in a small team. You have 3 different classes, each of which has a set of subclasses on its own to add some variance. And you get your missions and your rewards from what seem to be social areas. What in the world does this remind me of? Huh. That explains everything. Not all of this game is like Phantasy Star Online, though. There's definitely leftover Halo in this game. And it makes sense, as it is a Bungie title, and the music definitely has remnants of the Microsoft exclusive series. Thankfully, there's no Breaking Benjamin anywhere whatsoever, so it's all Martin O'Donnell's and Michael Salvatore's masterful work running through your ears as you run through enemies. Overall, if Halo were turned into a multiplayer experience, this probably would have been it. Speaking of multiplayer experiences, the other part that's definitely not like Phantasy Star Online is definitely the PvP multiplayer. If you want to blow up your fellow Guardians, look no further. The Taken King expanded it out, and it's definitely taken off with stuff like Supremacy, which is basically team deathmatch with honor grabs, and Control, where you take over zones and try and control said territory. There are even special things that run throughout the different factions in the game, and the Iron Banner events that happen about once a month have players in a frenzy to make rank 5, especially since Rise of Iron. So, I'm reminded of an old Dreamcast game when I play the storyline. I actually enjoy the multiplayer, which is surprising. And thankfully, this game has a whole lot higher production values, which is very much unlike this show. However, there are parts of Destiny that feel destined to be nitpicked. You may shoot me for that pun. One of the biggest things I can't stand is the lack of matchmaking on anything higher than a strike. Now, I get there are communities out there that have sort of taken care of this issue. I hear DestinyLFG.net is a great place to find people to run Nightfall strikes, Prison of Elders events, and raids. However, for me, I just find it a real hassle and would just rather try to find friends that I know play the game on the system I use. It's a real nitpick, of course, but for a quick play, particularly for story completion purposes, I'd rather just have matchmaking solve the problem. This does push me into another issue, storytelling. Now, I know I said I like the way the story was told, but Destiny has a weird way of breaking it up in ways that require you to do the multiplayer raids to figure out what else is going on. These are minor issues until you get to Rise of Iron, where there are only 3 missions that comprise the entirety of the regular campaign. The rest of it is after-game stuff, either quests after the fact or the multiplayer raid. I honestly felt a little gypped at the end of Rise of Iron, and while I know there's plenty of content, there was no excuse not to integrate, say, the Year 3 Gallarhorn quest into the main campaign. While Destiny does have its issues, it doesn't diminish the experience. In fact, I've had a lot of fun playing this game. But now that I'm done talking about it, I think it's time to ask something about it. It's once again time to ask the question. Is Destiny worth your cash? The current complete form of Destiny is now Destiny the Collection, which retails for around $50. This includes the regular game, both expansion packs, the Year 2 expansion, The Taken King, and the latest expansion, Rise of Iron. This is the only way to get the entire game, and it's only on the PS4 and Xbox One, as Rise of Iron is not available on the PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360. However, since this game actually has about 3 years of content, I'd say $50 is a good deal. Definitely get this if you're new to the series and want everything all at once. Granted, I only spent $30 on my Destiny experience, having pre-ordered Rise of Iron, and then getting Destiny the Taken King Legendary Edition through that promotion that I talked about earlier. It's funny how enticing this game was after ignoring it for so long. Again, granted, it's probably due to the way I acquired it, but had I started in the beginning, I probably would have enjoyed it. It's definitely a much better value for newer players since they can get everything all in one place through that $50 collection that Destiny has. But I definitely suggest everybody play this game at least once. It's definitely more of a multiplayer experience, and if it had matchmaking everywhere, it would have been fantastic. Oh, and the Vault of Glass can go